to you from all of us organizers. Good morning and good evening to others who are joining us from elsewhere. It's wonderful that all of you could join us today. We are today going to be talking about local, fostering a robust local data ecosystem for sustainable sanitation service delivery in cities of South Asia. This webinar is part of a series on we started last year and is co-hosted by Athena Informatics, as Center for Policy Research, FANSA, IRC, SWA, UNICEF, and WaterAid. On behalf of all of them, I'm delighted to welcome you all to today's session. As mentioned, we started last year in September with a session on municipal financing for sanitation in small towns, which had more than 200 participants who joined us for that discussion too. Today's workshop will be followed as planned by three other workshops. One on strengthening women's and girls' access to safe and affordable wash services. The next one following that will be on safely managed drinking water services in light of climate change. And the final one being planned is on looking at rural-urban integrated cooperative services. But today's topic is fostering robust local data ecosystems for sustainable sanitation service delivery in cities of South Asia. Uh, uh, in looking at the topic today, I'm revisiting the making services work for the poor World Development Report, which had kind of laid out what accountability mechanisms are across service delivery. And essentially what we are focusing today is on the short route of client power and service delivery as being a driver for looking at data and monitoring systems, which till now are understood more in a top-down fashion. So the emphasis, in spite of our understanding of how local data ecosystems are so important, remains to be quite top-down, right? So while data is generated in local services between communities and service providers, while operational responsibility often lies at the bottom tier of government, as citizen accountability is kind of the end game of service delivery. We do see that the data monitoring systems are yet quite top down, be it the SDGs or national program monitoring efforts, which focus on capital investments mainly, or looking at one-off projects funded either by donors or external development agencies, which set up data monitoring systems essentially for the project. But however, we understand that what needs more focus is on whether these kinds of top-down monitoring systems can create robust local data ecosystems. The service delivery challenges are on the ground, and that's what all these efforts should be aimed at, is the overall view that this webinar is going to focus on. So means the critical questions are at the ground level, whether we look at our past failures in sanitation services where O&M hasn't been monitored well, where we haven't really used and made policy decisions from the data we've gathered, where in a context where 60 to 75% of the costs of O&M services essentially are local and operational, and where operational data needs to be monitored for it to be effective and efficient, and that the citizen-centric services need to be brought to the fore because they are the ultimate beneficiary or the ultimate driver for the sanitation services. So today's workshop is in two sessions. I am moderating the first one. My name is Shubhagato Dasgupta. I'm a senior fellow at the Center for Policy Research. Um, and in the first panel, we are looking at imperatives and challenges for local data ecosystems, learnings from practice, where we have three presentations. One from Kun Zhang, Program Manager at Athena Infonomics, who has been leading an effort on serious cities and has been looking at this conundrum from bottom up too. Secondly, we will have the IMIS presentation, which will be shared between partners at SNV, Shadrul Islam, Mohammed Wazid Zaman from the Aid Foundation, who runs this, is the operator, and then Mr. Azmal Hussain, who's the secretary of the Jasor municipality where it works. The final presentation will be by Neha Agarwal, Senior Research Associate at the Center for Policy Research, and she'll be talking about some of the work that that CPR has been involved in with the government of Orissa in planning and implementing digital ecosystems driven from the local level. This will be followed by a short 5-minute Q&A for clarification questions. The second panel will look at unlocking accountability, transparency, and scale at the local level. And it will be a panel discussion moderated by Mr. Peter Harvey, Regional Advisor at UNICEF South Asia. We are very lucky to have government representation, national government representation through Ms. Sharmishta Debnath from the government of Bangladesh, through Anand Trivedi from the Niti Aayog in the government of India. We also have Sudha Shrestha from UN Habitat Nepal, and Naun Kim, Principal Urban Development Specialist at the Asian Development Bank. To wrap up the understanding from the citizens' perspective, we'll be looking at to lean on Dr. Sarayu Natarajan, founder of APTI Institute, that has been doing some very interesting work in looking at the citizens' end of monitoring systems. And finally, Deepa Karthikeyan will be co-founder and director of Athena Infonomics, will be doing a closing up and wrapping up the sessions. With no further ado, I would like to invite Quinn Zhang to share her presentation and thoughts about their learnings from what the CWS cities have been doing. Over to you, Kun.
Thank you, Shubhagato. Really honored to be here today. So I am starting to share my screen. Please let me know once it's visible. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. So I will just be sharing some observations from our work on data systems with everybody here today, just as a brief context to all of the great discussions that we're going to have, and with all of the presentations and the panel discussions. So my name is Quinn, and I am from Athena Infonomics. Athena has done quite a number of data systems assessments over the years in South Asian countries, from India to Bangladesh to Nepal. So some of the key questions that we ask while looking at data systems from national to state, province, district, and to local service level data systems is that, first of all, we ask, who is the data owner? Is it the local government itself, or is it collected by a third party, such as for a IFI donor-funded program? And for what purpose is the data collected? Is it by the is it for the national or higher level government reporting? Is it for the city's own use, or is it for donor-funded program reporting? And associated with that, it's not always straightforward who funds the data collection, because sometimes you can have multiple funders for the data collection, and sometimes the money may come from so the money may need to be spent by the city government itself, even though it is a requirement for national level reporting. And then also in what format is the data available? Is it on paper and not very accessible, or is it in digital format that can be easily reviewed and analyzed and used? And then who has access to the data? Does the city government, the local government, who is the ultimate party to deliver sanitation services and to plan the services, have access to the raw data if it is not the data owner? And finally, all of these questions tie into how is the data being used and by whom? And can we improve the data usage? So all of these questions are some of the key things that we look at while we examine data systems across the different levels across the countries in South Asia. And from these, we have some observations on the data flow from the different levels. So starting with the local government itself, which is responsible for service delivery and service planning. Now, so everybody knows that in order to deliver sanitation services effectively and efficiently, the local government needs to have service level data, which is granular enough and detailed enough that provides data on the access, the population's access to different services across the sanitation service chain, from toilet to treatment and reuse. So the kinds of data that the local government collects now is to a very large extent determined by the types of data that are required for reporting purposes. So a lot of the data collection that we see at the local level are flowing upward to the state, province, or district level, and then finally to the national level, where it is aggregated. And the data is often stored in systems like the national or state MISs. So there are a few things that we observed in this process. So one is that the data reporting requirements often in these MISs, such as SBM in India, NSC in Nepal, and UGIIP in Bangladesh, they focus on infrastructure construction and especially on toilets, but not so much on the actual service level, which basically means that how much percentage of the population has access to something, who is using what. And the data sets are also often aggregated and lumpy in a way that they would be categorized into sanitary versus insanitary toilets. They would be classified into open versus closed containment systems. And these are often very much highly aggregated categories that do not provide enough information on what percentage of my containment units are septic tanks, what percentage of them are twin pits, what percentage of them are single pits. And if it is a septic tank, does it have a soak pit or does it not have? Is it connected to an open drain? Because all of these different types of containment units are going to need different types of interventions to upgrade them, to make them safe, right? So the data sets that are often collected in these MISs are aggregated. And then there is further very limited accountability mechanisms to really drive improvements for service level improvements for the cities, because oftentimes the city's performances are only compared with last year's, and that if the city does not perform any worse than last year, it's usually fine. And there's really no clear target setting for where the city needs to be and how the city can get there and enforcement of those targets. There's also very limited guidance or resources from the higher level governments to strengthen the city level data infrastructure, so that if you see this kind of information flow, it's mostly unidirectional upwards, but there's very limited information feedback, from the higher level back to the local level, other than for limited infrastructure gap financing. And the city does not really know how the data is getting used or if the data is getting used at all, other than for the very limited infrastructure financing. So much of the city level data system is influenced by this kind of higher level reporting requirements. And the cities don't really have much of an incentive to collect a lot of the service data. And it also doesn't have the resources, because a lot of the resources also need to be devoted to these kinds of reporting. So the limited kinds of own initiatives that we've seen of data collection at the city level have been mostly focused on budgeting, which includes revenue generation activities or expenditures. And for example, things that we commonly see across the South Asian cities would be a collection of tipping fees at the sewage or for fecal sludge treatment plants, or for the records for the desludging services offered by the municipal owned trucks themselves. And because there are so many data gaps in the existing system, because so much of the city data system is determined by higher level reporting and by their own activities focused on budgeting. So we've seen that IFIs and donor funded programs have tried to come in and to try to fill the gap. However, these are usually costly and one-off survey-based initiatives, and there's limited coordination with the local government in order to support the actual improvements in the data infrastructure. So the problems still persist. And because of all of these issues happening, all of these challenges, and what we've commonly seen is that the cities often rely on 10-year-old census data for their service level planning purposes. And because these are the only data sets that consistently collect citywide service level data, but they are so outdated, and there's really so much of additional data that has been collected, but these are just not being used by the city governments for the reasons that we just talked about. So what we've seen is that the local government is a data producer, a data generator, but not so much a data consumer. And what we want to do is to make sure that they're not just data producers, but they can also become data consumers for delivering efficient services. So what these all means for our discussion over here is that the national and state level MIS systems, as we can see, are useful for sustained data generation at scale, because these are often the data points that the cities collect and focus on collecting, but they're usually of poor quality and ineffective when they're not tied to a clear accountability and resourcing framework where the city is clear that it needs to be accountable for its performance and also has the resources to collect the data. And that if we want to improve the quality and sustainability of the data systems, we need to make sure that the data collected is useful to the producers of the data, and to make sure that the ease and cost of collecting it is also managed. So, and that you will hear from our other presentations today about how SMV and CPR have attempted methods to really work with the local city government to improve the data use at the city level. So thank you for, and thank you, and yeah.
Thanks so much, Quinn. That was an excellent backdrop from your studies around what actually is happening with looking at monitoring and gathering data. I'd now like to move on to the Bangladesh presentation about this interesting IMIS system. I'll hand it over to Shedrul Islam Bhai to guide us through it. You have two other presenters with you too. So if you, it's over to you, Shedrul Bhai.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shubhagato. So can you see and am I audible? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so welcome to my presentation on IMIS, so Integrated Municipal Information System. It's a planning and monitoring tool for various urban services. So it's a web GIS-based information system, actually helps the municipality to take decisions, and they can also plan based on the informed decision. So information-based decision they can take. And this is mainly the service provider's point of view. The service providers mainly is the users. However, their authorities or the regulators, they also can monitor using this system. So usually, so all the municipal services that the municipality is being provided, it are linked to the holding ID. So municipalities provide the holding ID to each of the main buildings, and through this, and this is unique ID. Through this unique ID or holding ID, the municipality, all these services are integrated through the IMIS. This is one platform, but integrate all the services of the municipality. So the IMS actually it has three functions. So one is the reporting through dashboard, managing the services that municipality are providing, and also it does the GIS analysis for planning and decision making. So it reports, it has a powerful tool, dashboard. So it also provides the real-time status of the services through these numbers and also the charts and graphs. And it can also filter and customize according to the need of the city. Also, it reports the progress on the performance indicators and against the targets set for each of the services. And it helps the municipality and the service providers to ensure to ensure the efficiency of the services and ensure the accountability. That is one of the main purpose of the system. So in order to manage the services, it also has a web-based applications can be accessed through the desktop, and also it has mobile apps which is being used for field assessment, survey, and other data collection. It also can be interlinked with the other local databases which are not managed by municipality. To also it can share the data. It also has an online payment system. The customers can pay the fees through this IMS system using the online platform. So the IMS, it stores all the necessary information and analyze in order to provide the services, manage the services at each stage of the service delivery. So here you can see a FSM service delivery. So it has a service value chain, and at these services, it uses the apps and also the systems to provide the services and plan and also monitor. So IMS does not bring a new system, rather, so existing system, which is mainly the paper-based and non-special. So that is being converted to digital system. However, it requires a little customization of the business procedures. It has also tools through which it can analyze all these, provide the GIS analysis. It can create the buffer. It can also can filter. So, for example, if you look into this map, so the blue line is the river passes through the Zinada municipality, and we can see that within the 100-meter buffer from the river, so it has around 1,100 pit latrines, and this is a potential risk during the rainy season for polluting the environment by flooding the toilets. So currently, it is being implemented in 3 towns: Zinada, Joshua, and Khulna. But however, in another 2 systems is being developed. One is Gazipur for FSM and sewer system, and Khulawasa for water supply, and also for Benapur and Kustia. So very soon we'll replicate it. So as Mr. Sugagot was mentioning, that Jhinada municipality is providing the services, and they have contracted out the service to a private company, Aid Foundation. So Mr. Wahiduzzaman, he is the director of this Aid Foundation, and so he will share this use of IMS for FSM services. Of course, it is pre-recorded to manage the time. So I think Mr. Ram will share the presentation, please.
This is Wahiduzzaman, Director, Aid Foundation. We are the service provider of FSM service to Jhinada Purosabha. This is Jhinada Purosabha information. This is the total number of building, total holding, and total containment position at Jhinada city. We are providing FSM service to Jhinada. This is FSM dashboard, the total number of containment, total safety tank, total pit latrine, and other information is here. When customer come to us for emptying his containment, then we go to application, we create new application, we request the customer for the tax code. We input the tax code and other information like his name, address, and mobile number. Then we save this information. After save the information, automatically create customer's ID. Then we go to assessment. This is assessment details. After assessment, we go to emptying position. This is emptying details, customer's ID, customer's location, and other information. Then we go to disposal. This is disposal details. After disposal, caretaker give us a receipt and caretaker sign the receipt. After disposal, Purushoba or Aid Foundation like to know the location of containment, then you go to location map. This is location map. It's a containment location and containment details information is here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is just the presentation on demonstration on FSM services. However, it has a multiple uses. So for the sake of time, we are not going to that. So here we have Joshua Municipality Secretary, Mr. Azmar Hossain. So Joshua Municipality has been implementing the IMS a couple of months. So I would like to know from Mr. Azmar Hossain about his experiences and how municipality is being benefited of using these IMS services. Mr. Azmar Hossain.
Thank you, Mr. Shaidul Bhai, and welcome everybody who are participating in the webinar. I am the Azmar Hossain, Secretary, Joshua Purushoba. You know, in Bangladesh, Joshua Purushoba is an old and ancient city. Almost 0.45 million people live in this city, and we have 25,000 septic tank different sizes. The IMIS system is a fantastic services to provide customer services for the municipality. SNB, Netherlands Development Organization, provided us the system. They have trained our staffs. Now we are giving the services to our customer for FSM service. We are taking application through our customer. We already we have appointed a IT assistant and individual mobile phone number for the customer. A customer, when he need any services, he can phone to our customer service, and our service provider, Mrs. Shilpi, she she received the call, and IMIS system, he registered the application through IMIS system. Then our worker of conservancy and drivers, they with Bakutak, and they emptying the safety tanky and unload to our delivery platform, where the treatment plant is delivery the Bakutak, the FSM, all the fecal slash and treatment there. So we want to use the IOS system for the municipal for another services in future. We want to giving the services to our customer promptly, and we want to giving the services systematically and timely. Beside this, IIS system is usable for our revenue income. We can impose and collection our holding tax, trade license, and other revenue by IIS system. Already, we are trying to develop a better system with the help of SNB, Netherlands Development Organization. In future, if we being our staffs are not IT based sound, they are very poor IT knowledge. So SNB is trying to giving them IT sound. In future, we will fully use the IMIS system then our customer will better service from us a short time, and we will provide the service efficiently. And beside this, our revenue income will increase day by day if we impose the system to impose and collection our revenue. I think IMSI systems is also effective for online billing system. If we are able to start the online billing system, then our customer will pay their all fees and revenue through using by IMIS software, and they will pay their fees by mobile banking system. Our municipal board, especially Mr. Mayor, councillors and officials, they are very interested to use this IMSIS software. I think in future our Joshua municipality will able to provide better services by using this software. Not only FSM services, any kind of customer services like water billing, holding tax, development, and other. We want to all records and applications and customers applications and other services we want to provide through IMSIS software by using IMSIS software. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Azmat. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful to see.
So,
Okay,
just one, I would like to share the just one or two slides, the challenges. Okay. So just the challenges, there are a couple of challenges that we have experiences and also foresee. One of the things how to replicate to the other cities. Also, if perhaps you know that there are challenges with the data, getting the data, and also there is no nomenclature in Bangladesh for holding ID. These two are the main two issues that for replicating the IMS in new cities. But in order to ensure the sustainability, of course, we know that we need to ensure the maximization of the IMS use, maximize use, so that the IMS can be used for other sectors as well, so that it can be integrated. And being as municipality is getting benefit out of this, so they will continue these things. As some of the questions already questioned, how it will be sustainable. So this is one of the issues. And also the integration between sharing the data among the different agencies is also very challenging in Bangladesh. So it is one of the area. So behavior says we need the municipalities. So from the paper-based to GIS-based, we also need attitudes and behaviors, and also from the commitment, from the political commitment is also required, or the political leaders, mayors, etc. And also at the national level, some key support is required. So one is the enforcement for digitization across the country. So Bangladesh government has taken a lot of initiative at national level, but it needs to be enforced, replicated at local level. And also data hosting, and also a couple of other issues are there, and also need to provide that technical support to the cities from the, it also need to be centralized so that the municipality can get technical support. And also, of course, finally, the accountability mechanism. This system also linked to KPI, and also it needs to be linked with the national accountability mechanism. So that will help to replicate and ensure sustainability of the IMS across the country for the municipalities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was really comprehensive, and in picking up these points, you did answer a number of questions that were coming from the audience. So thanks again for that. I would like to now invite Neha Agarwal from the Center for Policy Research to talk about how data and monitoring systems are being used and played out in Orissa. Over to you, Neha.
Hi, are you guys able to see my screen? Okay, great. Just 1 second. Right. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here to discuss CPR's insights into a topic that is indispensable to achieving safely managed sanitation across South Asia, especially fecal sludge management, which starting from a handful of pilots in the region about 5 years ago is now poised to serve close to 1 billion people in India alone by 2030. I would also like to congratulate the past presenters for making some very insightful comments on the future of these data systems and ecosystems in the region. As Kyun highlighted, the national MIS so far has spurred local data generation, and local bodies are producers of data, but very rarely consumers of it. Like SMV before us, we are trying to strengthen the sanitation data ecosystems from the bottom up so that these local bodies emerge as the primary consumers of the data. In my presentation today, I'll cover our work in two parts. In the first part, I'll talk about what we've been doing so far. In the second part, I'll lay out some lessons that we've learned and are still learning for scaling up these systems and strengthening these systems going forward. As is true to any service delivery system, the success of a non-sewered sanitation system is also founded on effective planning, infrastructure development, and operations. Our interventions specifically address the planning and operations of sanitation systems and inescapably have a bearing on infrastructure development as well. Before diving into what these systems actually look like, I want to take a moment to talk about the imperatives for both of these systems. The planning system for sanitation emerged in response to the need for rural sanitation planning. Unlike cities, villages and rural local bodies, being smaller in size and lower in population densities, are individually unable to unlock economies of scale for rural sanitation systems. Therefore, we decided to approach rural sanitation planning at the level of the district. And once we had this figured out, it was about figuring out how to combine the diverse and siloed data sets that are imperative for planning. And here we saw that spatial planning provided us not only a tool to combine these disparate data sets, but also to more operationally and intuitively plan and consult with the different stakeholders. When it comes to the day-to-day operational management, the genesis for this essentially lied in the need for creating a system that is able to collect, integrate, and analyze data across the service chain for informing insights on asset utilization, on cost recovery, tariff design, service timeliness to support not only immediate quality of service, but also future planning, policy, and infrastructure development. So let's look at the planning side system first. Here, the system is based on components that are open source like RAS GIS and GeoServer, and it allows to collate, visualize, and analyze different forms of spatial data. Even the basic framework for planning that the government has laid out recently requires knowing aspects like groundwater depth, urban infrastructure proximity, ecological features of a region, all of which is available but sporadically and from different sources. So we've been using the platform to unify these data sources and on the one side, prioritize districts for rural sanitation interventions by looking at data on surface water, groundwater, along with current availability of infrastructure to understand where the state can intervene for the quickest and the highest impact on water pollution abatement. And also on the other side, actually developing the district level sanitation plan that helps us achieve this goal. So here we've considered where does urban infrastructure exist? How well is it connected to surrounding rural areas? What type of FSM demand do these rural areas actually present to ultimately come up with clusters that can leverage intergovernmental coordination for quick scale up of services, but also to identify clusters of Gram Panchayats and that is rural local bodies that would need greenfield interventions of their own. On the operation side, the FSM platform, which we've developed with a partner, eGovernance Foundation, which has been live in the state of Orissa for the last 1 month, helps citizens be connected to the urban local bodies, be connected to the desludging service providers. So citizens can request services. The urban local bodies, on receiving the request, can assign desludging operators, assign vehicles, generate the invoice. On payment of this invoice, the citizen queues up for the service, at which point desludging operators report for duty for delivering the service. And once they have delivered the service, the citizen can report their feedback on the service quality, on sanitation worker safety as well. Once the desludging operator has evacuated the sludge, they go and deposit it at the FSTP, at which point the FSTP operator is able to report back to the ULB that a load of sludge has been collected and disposed at the fecal sludge treatment plant. So overall, the system allows the ULB to have an oversight, unified oversight from the service request to the delivery of sludge at the treatment plant basis a unique application number. So what have we learned from all of this for creating data systems and situating these data systems within existing ecosystems to ensure sustainable embedment? Right, we approached it initially conceiving of it as a linear process where we standardize and study policies, we develop and deploy a system, and then we let it be implemented from there on out. But what we've realized is that the process itself is comprised of multiple feedback loops. So we learn not only from implementation for the platform design, but also for the policies and processes. And at this stage, we understand that each of these needs to reflect each other based on our learnings from the ground, that these are complex processes full of negotiations between local bodies and citizens and service providers and local bodies. So it really takes the time to validate understanding, to iterate on what we already know, and to approach this from a place of openness and empathy. But also that there are new areas for policy design and development that emerge when we really do that deep dive into taking complex offline processes online. So one example for us is if we have, and we do have really large septic tanks in most of urban India. So the question for us was, do households need more than one trip? How confidently do households know that they need more than one trip? Can they request urban local bodies for more than one trip? What implications does this have on assignment of operators, on the per trip price? And so we've had to deal with all of these questions on the side of the policy. On the side of the actual data, and especially when we're dealing with planning and we're dealing with data that has already been created by different types of stakeholders, really there are many questions on what is the provenance of this data? How reliable is it? How verifiable is it? Is it integrable with other forms of data? So we are grappling with all of these questions, which are A, indispensable to these conversations, and B, also integral to figure out over a longer period of time. With all of this, we still have a perfect system, but how do we embed this system within the ecosystem? So 3 pillars here: systems, people, processes. And with the processes bit especially, it's a bit tricky because the sanitation landscape in South Asia is still evolving. So at no point can we stop. We need to co-evolve with that evolving sanitation landscape. And finally, our hope is that instead of national MISs and international frameworks driving these local data collection efforts, the data generation will actually happen on ground, be used on ground, and ultimately inform the different endeavors at these different governance scales. Finally, to close off, we know that the scale of the problem is huge. There is tremendous diversity of approach, tremendous diversity of resources, but the goal is unified, and the data system itself is only a tool, and that the strengthening of local systems is going to be an ongoing project requiring sustained investments and capacity building. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Neha. It was comprehensive issues around what we are learning with local data. Given that we are running short of time, and there have been lots of questions, I'll park them for the next panel discussion. Just one question that came in really early for Ms. Zhang is that if you can just talk to us a bit about why was the data, the various data that was generated from these national and international monitoring systems not being used locally. Did you get some insight of it, Kun, from your work, from your various studies?
Sure, Shubhakato. So one of the main things is that the types of data that are being collected are not really useful for the city governments because they're heavily influenced by what's required for reporting to higher level governments, which is usually aggregated. So it would be oftentimes, as what we've seen, binary variables, binary indicators as sanitary versus insanitary toilets, closed versus open systems, which are not focused on service levels. And a lot of that data, because it's not granular enough, it's not focused on service levels, the city governments cannot really use it for service planning purposes or for service delivery. So, and because so much of that so much of the city level data system is influenced by these kinds of reporting requirements. So the city governments don't have the incentives to collect service level data on their own due to weak accountability, nor do they have the resources to collect such. And sometimes the data collected by IFI donor funded programs are usually programmatic, and they track a lot of inputs, outputs, and a lot of the times associated with infrastructure, and again, not the service level data that city governments need. And even in cases where it does collect service level data, the city government does not always have access to the raw data sets that are collected by these programs.
Thank you so much, Kun.
Thank you.
I think we are on time, but I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Peter Harvey to moderate the next session. At this stage, Peter there were some interesting questions and from the last session too, but essentially we are looking at the question of how can national and international donor efforts be used to improve local ecosystems, data ecosystems, so that when there is a robust system at the bottom of the pyramid, so to say, it automatically creates high quality data for reporting back upwards instead of them being one-time efforts. Over to you, Peter.
Good. No, thank you very much, and thank you to all the presenters. Some really interesting insights there. As I was listening through it, made me reflect on some of my experiences in different countries and different regions, and there's so much that we're always so keen on robust data monitoring systems and information management systems, and a lot of work goes into their design. But so many times we kind of fall short, and it may be that I think a big part of it is the sort of over design sometimes. It's interesting to hear about the service level data, some really interesting aspects, but all of that data, what will be used for decision making? Where is that accountability and resource aspect that we heard from the presenters? So I think we know that they do a lot, but are they really serving the users? Are they serving the people that these services are designed to deliver for? So really pleased to see that we have 5 panelists lined up to talk upon this issue. So I think, that sort of the first question to all those panelists would be that we know that there are some gaps, that often the data systems are dominated by the kind of national level statistics and planning agencies. They aggregate statistical estimates, or line ministries are using them for their sort of formal reporting and compliance. But then, yes, how are they serving the people that these services are designed to reach? So, in all the panelists, the first question that, I would ask them to think about is how to enlighten us in terms of what you are doing in helping to build strong local data systems, that ultimately those data systems will help to sustain and improve the urban basic services that we really want users to benefit from. So if I can introduce, as I say, we have 5 panelists. I will introduce each of them in separate introductions, if you like, and then allow them to respond to a couple of questions, and then I'll move on to the next panelist. So the first panel member we have is Sudha Shrestha, who's a National Professional Officer with UN Habitat in Nepal. And Sudha has worked for UN Habitat since 2007, managing the WASH portfolio in the Nepal office under Urban Basic Services. She is a sociologist advocating people-centered technical approaches and her keen efforts aim to contribute to WASH governance that allows WASH service for all, everywhere, all the time, leaving no one behind. So absolutely solid objective there that we would all, I think, adhere to. And she believes that there are three-dimensional aspects that are vital: institutional structure, evidence-based investment planning, and capacity in terms of value and volume. So, Sudha, if I can ask you first, to sort of give a brief outline of what the work that UN Habitat is doing in Nepal, particularly around data monitoring, and then what were the motivations of the different tiers of government to develop and implement the national NWASH system in Nepal that you've been supporting? So from national government down to sub-national levels. And then the last question, on what improvements to the NWASH system and the offline governance systems would help local bodies achieve the objectives of data-led WASH planning? So I hope those three kind of interrelated questions are clear. And yeah, thank you very much. Over to you, Sudha.
Thank you, Peter, and good afternoon to everyone. This is Sudha Shrestha from UN Habitat Nepal office. So talking about the NWASH portal in Nepal, UN Habitat has been trying to strengthen those NWASH portal that has been developed by Ministry of Water Supply since 2019. And that NWASH portal has been very much comprehensive and sophisticated WASH data system that required lots of capacity to regularize and update in that mechanism from municipal level to the federal level. And definitely, as we have been talking, the data ecosystems at the lower bottom of the pyramid at municipal level, but this definitely is the startup from the federal government that is directly linked with the municipal data system as well. So this NWASH MIS portal has been trying and making effort to align with the JMP, those categories as well for reporting JMP. But one of the strong aspects of this NWASH portal is the WASH plans at the municipal level, directly linked to the WASH plans at the municipal level. And these WASH plans are automated through the system once when municipalities feed into this data portal. And as of today, out of 753 municipalities of Nepal, 300 municipalities are aligned with this portal, MIS portal, but definitely it is taking time, and little bit nervous on how long it will take to incorporate all 753 municipalities to align with this portal. So definitely there are lots of challenges in this a portal that has been developed. One of the major challenge is the capacity at the municipal level, because this is not the information system that can be fed into by the simple enumerators. There needs to have some technical background, as well as the regularize and regular updating mechanism is also quite a big doubt whether municipality can themselves offer to regularize that into the portal system as well. And definitely the capacity building at the municipal level in terms of value and volume needs to be the priority if we are to gear this NWASH portal at the efficient level as well. And the second challenge is since municipality information system required not only of the WASH data itself in isolation or segregated, municipalities required overarching lots of information for their decision making and management processes, like taxation system, the income level, everything. So that may be one of the gap where whether municipality really is buying this only looking into the wash. But definitely this is very much like aligned to the mandates given to the municipality levels, because all the operational wash services are now devolved to the municipal authorities as well. So this is one of the initiative that municipality buys for providing basic services of wash as well. And another is the portal itself needs to be strengthened in larger terms, because currently the focus is more on water supply, and that needs to be also like expanded to very in-depth, deep dive information system of sanitation as well. That is one of the like strengthening part that we need to look into it as a portal. And another is the missing of urban portfolio and the inclusive data portal as well, because the portal looks into all the municipalities in blanket as one go, but it does not segregate urban, rural, peri-urban, so the categories I mean into this portal. So that is also one of the another gap, that challenge that we need to look into. And definitely it also misses the SDG 6.3 category of information from the municipal level. And the final challenge is the alignment with the 3 tiers of government. The federal government directly links the information to municipal level, but how it can be aligned to the provincial government as well, because it is missing the link at the provincial government as well. So these are some of the challenges, though the initiative has been very much appreciated. These are some of the challenges that we really need to look into for further strengthening this capacity. And one of the another challenge we need to look into is the readiness of the municipalities, whether municipalities are really topped down by the ministry for this wash plans purposes only, or municipalities are ready to look into the basic wash services that they have been providing. And definitely it needs to look into the data system with the evidence-based investment planning process, whereas also the targeted program from the municipal investment for the wash services. So Peter, I will stop here. If any other questions, I'm happy to answer to it. Over to you, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sudha. And yeah, very interesting to hear. I think your examples of some of the challenges resonate quite strongly with me in terms of it seems easy on paper, but when you're actually implementing these systems, there are, particularly with multiple levels with municipalities, etc., there's, significant areas that we have to overcome. But I think it's an interesting initiative, and good to hear that the government of Nepal is moving forward to the MWASH, and overall it's been received well. Just to all the panelists, if you see there's a Q&A box at the bottom, if you do see some specific questions related to your areas, then feel free to address them as you speak, or respond to the Q&A in the chat there as well, so that we can also have that conversation simultaneously. But thank you very much, Sudha. And let's move on to the next panelist. So the next panelist is Sharmistha Debnath, who's an executive engineer, or the executive engineer with the Department of Public Health Engineering in Bangladesh. And Sharmistha is the head of the SIR division, which is working primarily on the collection of data from municipalities, so similar to what we've just been hearing about, and leading the preparation of databases for water supply, sanitation, and septic management. Sharmistha has extensive experience in providing technical support to different urban and rural projects linked with water, sanitation, and septic management. She is currently leading the Sanitation Dashboard initiative in Bangladesh. So Sharmistha, again, if you could share some of your experience, particularly with the Sanitation Dashboard, and give us some background in terms of what was the motivation for developing national level dashboard, and how is it being used? And then also, what are the plans of the Department for Public Health Engineering on sustaining that sanitation dashboard initiative? As we've heard, some of the challenge often with information management systems is sustaining them and ensuring that they have impact. And then I guess linked to that, what are the resourcing aspects to generate relevant data for cities, and how is that data useful to local governments? So thanks very much, Rameswar, and over to you. I hope you're online. I can't see you. I don't see. Oh, I think, yeah, I can't hear you, Rameswar. I don't know if others can hear it. It appears that you're not muted, but I'm not hearing any sound at the moment. Okay.
No.
No, I don't hear. Maybe you could try to Rameswar, you could try to restart adjust your settings or restart Zoom, because we're not hearing you at the moment. And in the meantime, maybe we can move on to the next panelist and I come back to you if that's okay, once you've got the sound working. Yeah, okay. Let's do that in the interest of time. So if we can move to what was the third panelist and put them second. So the third panelist is Anand Trivedi, who's a monitoring evaluation specialist in Niti Aayog in India. Anand has a management degree in marketing and finance and an engineering degree in electronics and communication. His current work at Niti Aayog, excuse me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, focuses on M&E and providing policy inputs for scheme redesign, restructuring and supporting scheme scale up, scale down decisions. He has played a critical role in institutionalizing the outcome monitoring framework right from its inception stage in 2017.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, we can now.
Thank you.
Okay, please go ahead. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Sorry for that. I think there is a network problem there. I'm really very sorry for that. I've just rejoined. So we all know that Bangladesh stands out for a country. We made an extensive and remarkable progress for eliminating the open defecation, but the challenge for the success is now how to deal with the safely managed sanitation services to be ensured for the local people. We all know that DPG is working with water supply, sanitation, and sewage management all over the country. In the rural level as well. So it's a big challenge now for us how to be in the improved sanitation facilities and also to make a sustainable solution to develop the inclusive and sustainable waste and fecal sludge management. It's a big challenge now for Bangladesh. In this situation, we have introduced an effective and feasible technologies for ensuring at least a basic service to the people of the city corporation and district towns in a sustainable manner. It's very important. The government of Bangladesh felt it's very important for us nowadays because we made an institutional and regulatory framework for FSM in Bangladesh in 2017, and we have to achieve the SDG goals by 2030. So it is very important for an assessment of how the sanitation situation is now moving on to Bangladesh, because after 2003, there is no basic sanitation survey in Bangladesh. So that was very much challenging for us. For that, a rapid assessment for 8 city corporation and 53 district towns is held to determine the area of population to be served, the service and options of technological solutions for FSM and solid waste, and also the solid waste management chain, willingness to pay, the investment, operation and maintenance, and other aspects. That is, Kuhn told her in her presentation that from UG towns and others. I have an experience also for working UG towns. Yes, she is right. And by analyzing all the situations, to address the growing concerns, particularly for the cities and the large towns where the problem is acute, the Department of Public Health Engineering has taken a technical assessment project, that is feasibility for implementing solid waste and fecal sludge management in 53 district towns and district level Poroshava, that is municipality, combining FSM and solid waste management for planning, implementation, and operation of maintenance the system. You'll be very glad to know that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has provided technical and financial support for this project. So the result of this study will be, it's a basis for preparing investment projects by the government of Bangladesh for development partners and sustainable plans and operation and maintenance, the city authorities, and the data from that project has been accumulated in a dashboard, and we called it a sanitation dashboard. Now it is for 53 district towns and 8 city corporations of Bangladesh. That is for 61 towns in total. But there is a plan for 329 municipalities. We will have a dashboard because we have 329 municipalities in Bangladesh. You can access the link. We have established the dashboard December 2021. It's very recent. And the link is www.stanboard.gov.bd. You can access it and you can see the overall situation of 61 towns, that the septic tank situation, the household, and the basic sanitation situation also. And there is an analysis also with the population and other basic things from the municipality. So from the presentation of IMIS from Shuid Bhai, we saw the dashboard for Jinaida municipality. Now from this link, you can see the dashboard or the existing sanitation situations for 61 municipalities in our country. And I think this is the first in South Asia, I think in Asia also, because we have searched but no dashboard found for any country. So I'm very much proud to announce that we have a dashboard with a different level of data. And it is my responsibility, that is the responsibility of Survey, Investigation and Research Division, DPHE, to monitor and further implementation of the dashboard for 329 municipalities. And we have different projects now currently running on DPHE. That is 23 municipality, 30 municipality from World Bank, 23 from Islamic Development Bank. GOB project are also there. And the survey work is going on for that municipalities apart from that 61. So we are very much encouraged that the dashboard will work and the data will be accumulated, and it is an open link, so the municipality can also assess their situation from that dashboard. That's from my side. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you so much, Shameshwar. It really sounds, very ambitious and very comprehensive. So I think there was a question if you could share a link to the dashboard so that other participants can see that. I think that'd be really interesting for us to see as well. And interesting to hear that it's used, for investment planning and, looking at interaction with donors as well. So I think sounds like a very useful initiative. So thanks very much for sharing. In the interest of time, I better move on to Anand, who I started to introduce before. So as I mentioned, Anand is monitoring evaluation specialist with the government of India. So the outcome monitoring framework that I mentioned facilitates target setting on output and outcome indicators for 600 central sector and centrally sponsored schemes across 67 ministries, departments. This again sounds like a very far-reaching and comprehensive monitoring framework. So Anand, maybe again, to hear your experience with setting up this monitoring framework, and in your opinion, how could your data governance tools be used to shape and inform investments in improving local data systems? and how are you shaping and informing the structure of national level reporting systems to focus on key service level outcomes? And do you think we can resource our cities to generate and use data better? So a number of interrelated questions there, but feel free to zero in on what you feel is most relevant. So Anand, thanks very much, and over to you.
Thanks, Peter, for the introduction. So I'll kind of start with a little bit of a context of the organization that I represent, in the sense that Niti Aayog, the Government of India's premier policy think tank, essentially is based on two broad principles, and one of them is the entire idea of cooperative federalism, wherein you essentially work, the central government works with the state governments to ensure that whatever systems are being built are not necessarily top down, but also having a lot of planning elements being flown in bottom up from the state governments. So that partly responds to the one of the concerns that was being raised earlier as to how a lot of our data systems are typically top down with aggregates only being reported. And that's what we try to work on a lot at the Development Monitoring and Evaluation Office within Niti Aayog that I represent. That's the Apex M&E office. So our entire idea is to make sure that whatever data systems that are being built now in the state government, in the national ministries, line ministries at the national level, are not just top down, but also essentially having those requirements of the bottom up stakeholders being built into the entire design right from the word go. So that is what we are trying to do. And the entire output monitoring framework, which you described, Peter, subsequent to that, what we have essentially done is when we realize that a lot of these data on the output outcome, all of these 630 programs and 5,000 plus indicators, when we froze them jointly with the ministries, despite that, we realized that on a lot of indicators, the data reporting problems continued. And that was essentially because there were no means of measurement at times when these indicators were frozen, or they were decided from the point of view of an aspirational means of measurement, which were to be supported by and which could not be implemented subsequently at the ground level when the feedback came in from the districts and eventually from the state governments. That is where I think what we are trying to do is institutionalize what is another initiative, which is called the Data Governance Quality Index. And that's where we are trying to not just look at the what part of the data, in sense what indicators should be monitored, but also look at how is this data being generated and flowing in right from the bottom to the top. And that's where I think what a lot of things that Kun also referred to when she was mentioning about the data assessments is the critical difference that we undertook when we did this assessments was we enabled these assessments to be in a self-assessment mode. So we did not independently do that. It was a completely participative process wherein all the ministries and subsequently their implementing agencies undertook an assessment of their own IT systems from the point of view of where they stand, with reference to generating granular, high frequency and high quality data. So that is the entire ethos of bottom up cooperative and element that we're trying to build. The other element is the competitive element. So one is where you kind of have the bottom up fed into the top down decision making as far as data ecosystems are concerned. Another is enabling these state governments, enabling these third tier governments to help build these data ecosystems on standardized frameworks. And that's where I think the cooperative element is also encouraged through the competitive element. So we come up with indices which drive the ranking of state governments as well as the municipal corporations in terms of how mature are their data systems. And that kind of drives those spirit amongst these municipalities to improve their own individual data systems. So another one element is the cooperative bit, another is the competitive bit. Apart from this, just to come back to some of the points which were being mentioned, in terms of building capacities on the ground, the role that Niti Aayog plays is primarily capacitating the state governments, but through the process of enabling through certain pilots. For example, Niti Aayog runs an aspirational districts program, and we work very closely directly with the districts on the ground to understand their data systems and enable and kind of make sure that their feedback from the ground level is fed back into the national designs of the data system. So that is where we work with both the tiers in parallel and ensure that the learning flows between those two initiatives. So broadly speaking, if we just look back at some of the issues that were raised earlier, and to respond to the questions that you were mentioning, we have systems in place to make sure that we have the bottom-up feedback coming in through the cooperative federalism elements. We encourage ownership of the data systems through the competitive elements. Thirdly, we ensure that these competitive elements are also being improved upon through a standardized framework, which is where the DGQI comes in, so that tomorrow when these siloed systems have to talk to each other, have to become interoperable, we don't run into another set of problems altogether. So that's the approach that we are trying to take at the national government. And I think I'll be happy to dwell on some of these aspects a lot more in detail when we get into the questions. Thanks, Peter.
Good, thanks very much, Anand. And yes, again, I mean, feel free to put questions in the Q&A and respond to those as well, as people may have specific questions on the monitoring framework and yeah, particularly that interaction across local governments. Let's move on to the next panelist at this point. So the next panelist is Na-Won Kim, who is a principal urban development specialist in the Urban Development and Water Division, South Asian Department for the Asian Development Bank. Na-Won Kim has managed and worked on a various range of technical assistance and loan projects relating to sustainable inclusive development, low carbon city development projects promoting cross-sectoral intervention and system innovation for sustainable and climate-friendly urban development, water supply and sanitation, smart cities and many other infrastructure and system provisions at ADB. She is focused on low carbon and resilient city development projects and reforms in the People's Republic of China, Mongolia, Kazakhstan and India. She holds a Master's of Science in Environmental Policy and Management from the International Institute for Industrial and Environmental Economics at Lund University in Sweden. So Na-Won Kim, if we could ask you to outline some of the work that ADB has done and what are some of the levers that compel international finance institutions like ADB to encourage and invest in digitalization and data ecosystems. And then also, how can IFIs incentivize cities to collect and use high quality data for decision making beyond the mandates of project and program delivery? So especially where there are large infrastructure projects, how can cities and municipalities be incentivized to use that high quality data for decision making in the long term, and how do we sustain those systems as well? So if I can hand over to you, Na-Won, and thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you, everyone, and then good to virtually meet you. I think the previous panelist and the speaker has many good examples and then cases and then very detailed explanation. But I would like to just comment on the perspective of ADB as a multilateral development bank. So before I going into what we are doing now for the digitalization of the sanitation sector, I just want to give you a background. So ADB is, as you know, that we've been dealing with a lot of developing member countries, and then basically we provide a lot of the project loan to support the infrastructure development and services. So these days that ADB has been focusing more on the sustainability of the asset that we support the government to develop. So this is a long-term perspective of system sustainability. And in the past, we have a less, focus on that. We just, help them the immediate need of infrastructure and services. But more and more that we're focusing on this sustainable issue. This is one of the background that why we are focusing on the data and then data digitalization. Also, we have a strategy 2030 has been introduced 2 years ago, that we also address like what is the current development agenda. And then one of that is utilizing the high level technology, especially advanced ICT technology, to utilize along with our investment, how we can efficiently develop this infrastructure. And then how that digitalization can support in the sustainability of this infrastructure. So those are the main sort of drivers that when we push for the more ICT platform and the smart governance, smart cities as well. So I'll go down to give you a little more examples of what we are doing now. So for the sanitation sector, that we are really pushing for the city-wise inclusive sanitation. So mostly when we receive a lot of requests from the government, they are really focusing on the centralized sanitation system. But often that they are not really looking at the what's the most effective way to design the sanitation system, because it's mostly the grant money as also attached to. So they tend to overbuild, and then they tend to looking at the more larger investment to demonstrate their benefit. However, that when we looking at the C-wise approaches, we found that this is more cost effective. So when we do the centralized sanitation system, but also we're looking at the what low density area can be applied for the fecal sludge and septic management in order to create a more cost effective investment. So from the design perspective, that we need a lot of information and data. Actually, when we process or preparing the project, we require a lot of different types of due diligence that include the technical and social and economic and environment. But all of this data, it has been put it into in order to rationalize the the project investment. In those processes, we just witness that those information has been collected, but has been put in the shelf afterwards. So then there's no, continuation of understanding what is the trend and what is the, the data and information helpful for the future design, right? So this is where we start introducing digitalization, and not only from the perspective of, different data source for the in the project design, but also when we're looking at the operation and maintenance side of a sanitation system, so that we also learned a lot of difficulty because of lack of data and information of their performance, and also ended up there having a lot of difficulties of financing the O&M costs. So for the digitalization sort of ICT-based platform can be really beneficial for helping the utility operators to maintain efficiently and then also provide a better service. So in my case, I'm introducing the city-wide computerized maintenance and then management system that combined with a lot of the different platforms like SCADA system and GIS mapping, but also it will link to the municipality asset management, and then also property tax, the smart data platform. So this is sort of having a lot of a combination of a different system can be generated, and that could really help to improve the O&M efficiency as well as a continuation of or sustainability of the system. So now we also found out that the lot of back or gaps is in the fecal sludge and septic management. So we are also doing the digitalization by collecting the local data to come up with what is the current situation, and then we will link up with the centralized sewage, this CMMS system. So it will give a lot of a clear overview is exactly where the gaps are, is where the problems are. and that will sustain, also for the system, as well as we are preparing another loan case, and that will really help to design the better or cost-effective investment. So this is come along as a part of our grant money, as well as a persuasion of the government how, and then by demonstrating the benefit of having this digitalization. I don't want to go in too much detail of technical side, because Anna mentioned all the important point of data standardization, data integration, data utilization, and data security. All of the aspect has to come along in order to design this system. Otherwise, the system also may work in silo, which is not beneficial. And then because of the quick change of ICT, technology, if you don't think about this, all the integration of the different platform and system, that you ended up wasting a lot of resources. So when we design this, we all have this more clear understanding of what is existing and what is the future changes will be, and then already plan for the beginning. So in that way, we are working with the government and then state government as well as the local government. So that's what we are doing right now. Sorry, it took too much time, but so there's a little bit of a danger. So we cannot really accept just existing local data, because they might not fit into the system. And then also we have to very carefully think about what kind of data you really needed for the planning and also the system operation perspective. So it is all of the, first, prior thinking and then thought process has to be come along. And that's where we try to, support the government through the grant and then also the project loan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nawon. Thanks very much. Yeah, some interesting perspective there in terms of some of the successes and challenges. But let's move on to our last panelist. So last but not least is Sarayu Natarajan. She's the founder of the APTI Institute in India, and Sarayu has a background in management consultant, venture investing, program development and management, and academic research. She has a PhD in political science from King's College London, masters in public policy, and an arts and law degree. Her research work primarily focuses on the intersection of technology and society. Sarayu has conducted several studies understanding the issues which prevent effective service delivery for marginalized citizens in the context of digitally mediated access to services. So Sarayu, it'd be useful to hear your experience and examples from other sectors or contexts of successes and failures of digital-first data ecosystems towards increasing service accountability. As we've been talking about, the data systems may look good, but are they having the impact in terms of improving the services and accountability for services? And then the second question, how well is the current approach to digital mediation of services poised to reduce last mile barriers to accessing services, so especially amongst the conventionally underserved or marginalized citizens? So over to you, Sarayu. Thanks very much.
Right. Thank you, Peter. I will say up front that my introduction holds far more promise than my comments can ever offer, but thank you very much for all that kindness. I run up the Institute, and we are a public research institution that looks at the intersection of technology and society. And we're very interested in public technologies, both thinking about the ways in which the state serves citizens, which is where a lot of these set of questions would fall, and also the ways in which citizens interact with the state using technology. And that sort of comes into question, particularly when we begin to think about elements of accountability. I'll sort of keep my comments starting from three standpoints: our work with Omidyar and eGov, where we looked at last mile access in the context of technology and governance.
We seem to have frozen. I don't know if it's only me or
Yeah,
if
I
other
was
people.
thinking the same thing. Yeah, Peter.
The same
It
thing,
froze.
yeah. Let's give Sally a few minutes to try and, must be a connectivity issue, I think.
It's a virtual world difficulty
Yeah.
that we have.
So, and it's always the case. She's been there the whole time, and when it comes to her time to talk, then she has a problem with connectivity.
Hi. I don't
Oh,
know if
you're
I'm
back. Yes, we can hear
Yeah,
you now. Yeah, please go ahead. We lost
I
you for.
think, right. I think also, the moment you say technology, something like this has to happen, but so I will not say it anymore. But essentially, like a couple of things that are relevant in terms of prior examples of ways in which citizen engagement has been done better. There are examples of, a couple of examples worth mentioning. One, of course, is from the work that we did in the context of e-government foundation, which is a large foundation that does public technology for municipal governments to deliver a range of services, not just sanitation and water related services, but also grievance redressal, as also tax, so payment of taxes. And they work with about 5 states now, and definitely a deeper engagement in 3 or 4 of them. One example that's worth thinking about in the context of the work that they've done is in Punjab, and it's early days yet because the program sort of launched late last year and it's sort of finding its feet, is the engagement between the state government, the technology provider, as well as a civil society organization, in thinking about the realistic ways in which citizens access the state, which is very often through intermediated channels, which is they reach out to the state using local leadership. So keeping that in mind, this kind of integration involving all of these 3 parties, where a civil society organization worked with last mile leadership to think about ways in which tech-mediated service delivery could be accessed, is something worth noting. I think another example worth thinking about is the work Arghem is doing, but I think it's in an early stage. And if there are individuals from Arghem in the attendee list, please post about this on the chat as well, is the work with the Manipur government in sort of building a digitally accessible, and it's a broader program, of course, but also building almost a set of assets available digitally to those working at the front line to navigate various issues, whether it is technical problems or sort of more broader social non-technical problems. So, an aggregation of best practices, case studies, data is all sort of housed in a single place. And then the fact that it's endorsed by the government also creates a certain amount of credibility, particularly given the earlier parts of the conversation around fidelity of the data, as also provenance. So there's a certain sort of legitimacy that is linked to information that's available, data that's available, that then becomes, that then attains a sort of a higher qualitative value on the ground. I think the other example, and it's worth putting on the table, though it might not be directly relevant to the conversation, is the example of Estonia, which has over a decade or so built out a very significant data exchange system. And so all of Estonia's, I'm confidently claiming this, but all of Estonia's governance is now delivered digitally. And what that means is that because different services have to interact with each other, and there's a huge amount of interdependencies because these are all complex systems. Having a data exchange that is, well governed, well understood, is also a critical layer that sits alongside data-driven governance mechanisms within domains. So having that conversation, I think, is also critical. I think that, just sort of stepping back from these examples or these sort of cases of, specific domains which have been done well. I think a couple of other points that are worth remembering and thinking about the question of accountability more specifically in the context of governance and service delivery, is that what we noticed in all of our work, right, is that a lot of government access, even when mediated by technology, is not by citizens themselves, isn't in the sense that it's not by individual citizens necessarily making complaints or making requests all the time. And for more public services that are more broad-based, let's say like there's a street light that's broken in the neighborhood. It's often intermediated in that somebody does it for a group of people. Certain other services like tax payment, etc., are individual, and that is perhaps because it's a sort of private, almost a private service that you would seek. But these are services that are very often intermediated, and this intersects very much not just with the need for groups of citizens to seek help, but also layers like politics, layers like ground realities that might start to play in. The other dimension worth thinking about in the context of last mile access, and this is again an observation based on large ethnographic work that we did here in Bangalore, is that very often last mile governance problems is solved by groups of citizens who use private channels, like let's say a WhatsApp group, to communicate with the local corporator, the frontline bureaucrat who is doing the work at the government department. So what that means very often is that there is a certain amount of capture of decision making and even the framing of accountability. And people who are on these channels who are able to successfully use it to make these claims of accountability are often ones with higher degrees of education, access, literacy, and certain amounts of privilege. And so what that means is that frameworks of accountability are also then defined by elites. So these are sort of the idea of data-driven governance without thinking about the way in which claim making and accountability work in contexts around the world is definitely problematic, and I think very much should be a part of the data-driven governance debate and conversation. So I'll pause here. I think we're way out of time. Back to you, Peter.
Thank you so much, Sally. Yeah, very interested in the last point, particularly about community-driven data for accountability and use of existing channels, and yeah, maybe that's something we need to think about a bit more broadly within the WASH sector. So we're a bit short on time. What I would just like is just very briefly for each panelist, just your 1 minute to give your key message in response to what you've heard, maybe to some of the questions that have come up in the chat, or something that you forgot to mention before that you think is really critical for this audience. So so let me start with go back to the beginning again with Sudha. Very briefly for you, over. Is Sudha still there? Yes, she is.
Yes, Peter. So basically, with this NWASH portal, I again go back to this NWASH portal because it had been like one of the asset of the sector as well in Nepal. So this had is a very, very good potential initiative that has been made by the government of Nepal, but still there are lots of challenges and strengthening part as basically it needs to be, as I have reflected earlier also, it needs to be institutionalized within all 3 tiers of the government, and the alignment of reporting and monitoring as well. And the second part is with this federalism in Nepal, like we still talk about federalism, though it had been 3 years from now, but still with the federalism, the roles and responsibilities in really operational services from federal to local level is really, really a challenging issue, because the clarity in roles and responsibility is still to be defined. And though the local operational directives had given all the mandates to the municipality, the autonomy had been in such a way that it is not aligned horizontally, neither vertically in coordination and collaboration as well. So and the third thing is the institutional architect. Like when we talk about the municipalities, though the municipalities are given totally the mandate of WASH services to the municipal authority, the institutional structure is in such a way that there is no WASH unit at the municipalities. It either anchored with the health unit or the environment unit or the social unit. So that institutional structure really needs to be strengthened as a part of this whole urban basic services or municipal basic services, wash services to the people. So these are some of the strengthening part, and capacity gap is definitely there in terms of um, quality and quantity, because one time including data system in the NWASH portal doesn't suffice. It needs to be regularized, taken for decision making, investment plans and everything. But what municipalities is buying is their portion of WASH plan is automated through this NWASH portal. That's why, like, at least they have this proportional responsibility taken care by this NWASH portal that is aligned to that. Because of the time, I may have lots of things to
Yeah,
say,
thank
but
you.
I stop here, Peter. Thank you.
Thanks. No, thank you, Sudha. I know it's difficult to keep to 1 minute, so it's a bit of a challenge, but maybe the other panelists could also try. Yeah, Shamistha, yeah, one question I asked you earlier, which I don't think we touched upon, was about sustaining systems. So you have this dashboard, but you know, what will it take to sustain that and incentivize municipalities in terms of data management? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Peter. Hope everybody is hearing me now.
Yeah, it's fine.
Thank you. Yes, it is very difficult for us, for the municipality, to incorporate and to shift to a digital system. So massive level of capacity building initiative. It is needed for maintaining and to maintain the sustainability of the dashboard, because we are really lucky to have in municipal level, we have Poroshobha water supply section in our municipality, but the capacity of that section is not up to the level, that is, or up to the mark. So we need a massive level of capacity building initiatives for, but we are very lucky to have the partners like ITN Buet, that is an international training network in Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology, DPHE and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation with ITN Buet. We have an MOU to capacitate the 329 municipal people, that is from mayors to the PTM tiers. We are giving some trainings. So I think it would be very much helpful for us, but the DPHE capacity building is also needed, and we have a plan for that. So I think for the sustainability, to move by an analog system to a digital system, it is very much needed, the capacity building. And I think SNB is working with the IMI system. The dashboard needs the IMI system. We have a plan to integrate the IMI system with the dashboard in future. So I think SNB and WaterAid will also be supportive to DPHE for capacity building, and we are working on that. Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you so much. And yeah, a lot to put into a short summary, but thank you so much. That's really good. So let's move on to Anand. Just some last reflections from you, Anand.
Yeah, so I'll rather spend the time on answering one key question which was raised in the earlier set of presentations, and which is how do we actually shift the entire local bodies and their local data ecosystems from just being data reporters to actually being data users? How do we shift the entire mindset? And I think there are two key elements. A, what kind of push and pull mechanisms can we institutionalize? Now, in terms of push, can we really think of having outcomes based monitoring right at the level of individual municipalities? And can we tag some of the grants that are made or transferred from the central or the state governments to these municipalities in terms of how well are they actually monitoring the outcomes? Because if they start doing it, the entire shift which was being earlier talked about of thinking of just the activities, just infrastructure at the ground level will start shifting towards saying what is the impact that we are creating on our citizens in the urban local bodies. So can we tag a part of our outcomes reporting or compliance on the outcomes reporting to the funds that we transfer? And will that create the necessary push? First. Second, it is extremely important that we start thinking of data as a transactional data and not just an activity which is separate from the implementation. So we saw the entire example of Odisha. I think the entire point of digitizing the entire process from making a request to delivering the service will ensure that transactional data in itself is generated, and it becomes easier for the municipal bodies to generate the required data, which they can also use in the real time for decision making. And once they start seeing that relevance, automatically we will start seeing the shift from data reporters to data users part. And how do we make this entire process enjoyable? We can create competitions. We can create competitions between municipalities within the states, between the states, as to how well they are actually transitioning through this entire story. So I think those are the broad directions which we can be possibly looking at.
Great, thank you very much, Anand. Yeah, very appreciate that concise summary of key areas to look at. So Nawon Kim, over to you, please, for just a few.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to just emphasize, who are the user? What is the purpose of a user? Because not all the data has to be open to everyone. There's a reason for the use and reason for the transparency, but also security, and also for the disclosure or non-disclosure. So, and then also like a fast, advancing ICT technology, there's a lot of different platforms, but we need to be very careful how to use it, and then what to use it, and how this, sustainability of this system can be further expanded to benefit, certain user. So I think this is a bit important question that we all has to think about before we talk about the data ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for your concise message there. I think that's really clear. Okay, so last and not least again, Sari, over to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. I think there's just a couple of points that I'd like to leave with everybody here. One, of course, is that, particularly with governance, it's very critical to remember that this is a civic right and a civic duty, and very much about how we think about digitally mediated access, as well as more broadly data-driven governance in these domains must be framed from that starting point, so that every citizen in that sense is to have a right and the ability to access, and solving those problems is very, very critical. Funding, thinking, efforts must be directed towards that. The second, I think, is from the broader question of marginalized communities and access, thinking very hard, and I brought this up earlier as well, about intermediation and the realistic ways in which communities and societies more broadly access digital governance is very important, and bringing that empirical information into this broader debate is very important. So I'll pause here and over to you, Peter, again.
Great, no, thank you very much once again, and for being very concise. I know it's challenging always with these with the kind of timing on this, but I'd like to thank all the panelists. I think some really rich experience shared there, and some good examples, and I'd encourage and thanks for sharing the links to the various monitoring frameworks that were available. I think that will be useful for other participants to see. So I think that's my part over with today. Thank you very much to all, and thank you to participants. I believe that I think Deepa from Athena is going to make a
Yes, hi Peter. I know we're over time by 3 minutes, but I'm going to keep this. But this has been incredible. I think we've asked some difficult questions, and I think we've heard honest answers. So that is encouraging, and I think it's the start of something promising in terms of both how we're going to hold national MISs accountable to delivering services for people by strengthening local data systems. So I think this has been fantastic. A special thanks to the panelists, Sharmishta ji, from Bangladesh, Nawon Kim, Anand from Niti Aayog, Sarayu, Sudha Shrestha from Nepal, UN Habitat. Thank you also very much for being here. This is an incredible panel. Peter, thank you for that fantastic facilitation and for taking the time to be here with us, everyone. And special thanks also to the representatives from the Jashore Paurashava. And I think that's what makes this dialogue series so exciting to us, because of the leadership we've consistently seen from government on these panels. So thank you, MD Azamol, for your fantastic insights, and of course, Shahidul from SNB for your notes on the IMIS, and Quinn and Neha, of course, from CPR and Athena for your presentations as well. This is a series, and we hope to continue to use this platform to facilitate similar conversations on themes of interest in the water and sanitation space. There are 3 upcoming sessions, one on specifically focused on how we're going to deliver or cater to the needs of women and their WASH requirements. That's coming up around International Women's Day sometime in March. We're going to have 2 other sessions focused exclusively on drinking water and what it takes to deliver safe drinking water, particularly in locations that are clearly affected by climate risks. And the third one on how to promote cooperation on between urban and rural service providers on WASH services. So stay tuned. We're going to have more interesting discussions on this dialogue platform, and incredibly grateful to all of you who were here with us today to make this happen. Thank you. This is fantastic. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you, Deepa. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hi, everyone.